Hello YouTube vintage stereo restorers and appreciators. This is video number 10 of the KA-2000. I hope I have not bored you to death, but we're right into the heart of it. I'm working on this channel here. The red caps are the ones that replace the old gray caps, just because I like the color. No. I talked about this quite a few videos ago about these German caps I've been able to get through Mauser, and they're great caps, 5,000 hour caps. Anyway, what we're particularly talking about today is a strange anomaly in the driver circuit. What it is here, in a slot that's labeled as a resistor, R23, there's a capacitor, 47 microfarad capacitor. Why? Well, I'll show you why. You're going to run into this on other amps of this vintage because the resistor was mounted down here underneath and the cap was switched. The cap should have been mounted underneath. And when I first saw one of these a few years ago, I was like, why would they do that? And I was thinking, I'll move it up top. And what I noticed is when I was just testing the amp and running it, how hot that resistor can get. Okay, well, where is it in the circuit? It's an emitter resistor with, I think you call that a bootstrap capacitor. This NPN driver transistor drives both the PNP and the NPN here. It's basically controls the bias and the center voltage as well as signal. It's probably one of the hardest working transistors in the amp. And it was, what was it on this one? A 2SC984, which is actually 2SC281 on this one. Like, you know what I mean? But it worked, and I replaced it with a 2N2219. Here's the thing about that resistor. I've done a little mod because if you look at the voltage and current across that resistor, and in just some really obvious ones, I've actually seen this 100 ohm resistor blistered. And here's what happens. On this Class AB amp, lower listing volumes, the outputs aren't really doing much work, if any. Okay? It's the transistors on this board that are doing the work. It's the three here that are doing the work. This NPN driving both the PNP and NPN Suzuki pair that drive the outputs. And this here, so if you're running it in Class A mode and you kind of run it not that loud but just moderately loud, that stage is actually working at max. And I proved this one time. I actually had the two transistors out in the channel and left two in and hooked it up to some speakers. And you know, up to about 4 on the volume dial, both channels sounded the same because the outputs weren't coming on. Soon as it got into a little more, the channel that didn't have the outputs started to go into clipping very quickly and then shut down because there's a protection circuit. And then I realized, yeah, actually most of my listening is done in the Class AB1 mode. So anyway, here's a mod to make this a little longer lasting. And you see this, I'm not going to reuse that 100 ohm resistor. I am going to go with a 100 ohm 2 watt into that position. And it is, if you try it up here, ooh, in you go. Like that. It's a little bit big. See the problem? So what we'll do is we'll put the 47 microfarad back in just like they did, and then do an undersized soldering with it raised off the board, and that way it can dissipate heat in an area where there's not a lot of other components dissipating heat. And that should last, that'll last for years because it's not going to be stressed. This here is a 1/4 watt resistor. And what I found in some instances, I measured the current, you're getting very close to 300 milliwatts. And when you think about it, most of your listing with your unit is under a watt, believe it or not. So you can have a big 100-watt Luxman L430, and it's got this huge output section, big transformer, big caps. Most of your regular listing, when you have it on, you know, trying to relax at night, is under a watt. And so those big stages aren't working. It's when you really want to crank it up and, you know, dance or whatever. That's when the big outputs matter. Anyway, I'm just going to leave that little mod with you. Not going to take too long on this one. And then we'll have another video shortly on when this board is recapped and retransistored. And one last little tip. Don't be afraid to test other components as you go along. See what I mean? Like, when you take, for instance, a transistor out of the circuit there and the caps out, you can test the resistors around it just by clipping on them, because usually they're not part of a circuit anymore. You've broken the circuit. And just, you know, that's what I actually do, is I clip onto them and test them, see how far out they are. And I've actually eliminated a lot of later issues by doing that, but it does take longer. Like this, as you can tell by video 10 here, there's quite a bit of time going into 1 amp. Anyway, thanks for watching and listening.